I'm Deb Acker. I'm an intuitive life coach and energy healer. I clear energy blocks to all areas of life, including love and abundance. And in today's video for Pattern Week, and as part of my upcoming Live Your Truth Pattern Breaking program, I want to talk about the pattern of feeling like you're invisible and hiding too is part of that. And so, how many of us, myself included, show up from a space of we don't matter, we're invisible in some way? If you've ever felt invisible in your life, um, this applies to you. Like I said, I've been there, and many times that invisibility, it may not be as apparent or as open as just you feeling invisible, but think about how many times maybe you've had a need from someone or you've made a request from someone and they've ignored your need, they haven't honored your need, they've pretended like it didn't matter, they haven't acknowledged what you needed. And so even just in thinking about how the pattern of hiding and the pattern of feeling invisible shows up. So many times we hide because we're scared about being seen or we're scared about being visible. And think about, if you tune in right now for you, when you think about being seen in some way in your life, just notice what comes up for you. You might be worried about feeling like you're too much. You might be worried about that if you are seen, you could do something wrong. Those are a couple to name, to name a couple. But just thinking about, like, when you think about being seen, what comes up for you? And also, when you're walking around in your life and you're hiding, you're feeling invisible, how does that make you feel? Just tune into, okay, when I'm, say for instance, this actually happened today, which is like so perfect. But I was parking. Today actually was a really relaxing day for me, which was awesome. It was absolutely 150% needed. But so I was parking today to go to my spa appointment, which is awesome, and I love my spa person. So I was parking, and I was trying to make sure that I got within the parking parameter, and there was a guy in front of me who had like a foot of space. And I asked him to move forward. Hi, Tony, how are you? So I asked him to move forward so that there was room for me to park where I wasn't parked illegally or in the red zone, or yellow zone actually. But and he moved forward a little bit, and then he just was like, I was tapping on his window and he just wouldn't look at me, right? So if you think about even just small moments like that, right? Small situations like that where, they might not feel like they're a big deal, but I think about how that made me feel, and even how I went into my spa appointment, and just it definitely was a trigger for me, right? Because for me that pattern, hello, for me that pattern is all around, like, he was showing up. I always believe, and I always say, with our patterns, people show up for us how we need them to show up until we fully have cleared the pattern. And I've been working on clearing this pattern. So, and part of it for me has been, okay, I've got to keep choosing to be seen, choosing to be visible, choosing to matter, because a piece underneath for me about not being seen or not wanting to be seen or not being visible is there's a deeper layer of I don't matter, or what I have to say isn't important, or doesn't matter. And so for me, this person in particular, this parking person, was showing up. He was showing up like I needed him to show up, because the energy behind that was around my father. And when I was a little kid, my parents had they separated, they got divorced. And so when I was a little kid, I felt very unacknowledged by my dad. And so basically, that pattern, it's one of my it's actually my deepest layer pattern is, well, it's abandonment, but as a part of that abandonment is the visibility and not being seen and not having mattered, not feeling like I mattered in that moment. And of course, in that moment, my dad it wasn't about me, it was about the relationship between my mom and him. And yet at 2 years old or 1.5, did not have the ability to distinguish that, right? I didn't have the ability to say, This is about my mom and my dad and not about me. So the energy that I took on, so they never said anything, but it was like the energy in the environment was, this is happening to me. He's leaving me. He's abandoning me. And so, like, as part of that, there was a not feeling visible in that moment, right? I was like, basically the little kid in me was screaming out, see me, see me, see me. And I like, there was nothing, I had no way to express that. Obviously at 1.5, I had no way to really express that, but that was what I was internalizing, and a piece that got stored in my body, so that then I started to attract situations where, like, even today, where someone showed up for me and pretended like they couldn't see me, and so, which I was grateful for, because when when someone gives me that opportunity to access another layer, like this is my deepest seated pattern, so I'm just clearing layer after layer after layer. But when someone gives me that opportunity to access another layer, that for me helps me to clear it. So many times, and I'm gonna write a blog post about this sometime in the near future, but many times we tend to want to push away the triggers. We tend to, when something feels bad, we want to push it away from us. And for me, what I've been doing is just, when something triggers me, I've been so grateful for it, because I'm like, great, it gives me the opportunity to feel it, and if I can feel it, I can heal it, or I can shift it and clear it out of my body. And so, as much as we resist our triggers, that has been a really amazing way for me to reframe when I'm triggered. Hey Nick, how you doing? That's been a really amazing way for me to shift how I look at triggers, right? And shift how I, how I view triggers, which has just been really, really powerful. So many times I'm like, oh, like in relationship, this person's triggering me, that's not good. And now I'm actually embracing it, and really almost like, for lack of a better way to say it, running towards it, so that it's like, okay, trigger me, because if you trigger me, I can clear it. And if I can clear it, then I won't have to experience it in my field. And that deep-seated pattern of abandonment for me, if I never had to have that wiring or that centering point for me, that somebody might leave me, somebody may not show up for me in some way, that would be huge. Like, that would be, like, that has the potential to change everything in my life. And so, back to the pattern at hand, but you can see, like, so there's so many layers to our patterns, right? We think, okay, we're not even thinking about patterns, first of all. So I get that most people, that's not their wiring. I love patterns, so that's like it's my jam, it's my thing. So I really do think about patterns, but I get most people aren't. And that's what I'm here for, to help you guys see yourself clearer and help you shift these things that aren't working for you. And so this pattern of feeling invisible, this pattern of hiding, many times, if we look at it, so learn the lessons from the pain rather than shutting down the pain. Yeah, exactly. We are so conditioned to, thank you, Nick, for saying that. We are so conditioned to shut down our pain. We are so conditioned to push it away. And instead of it, it's like almost like, you give it a seat, you have it sit down, and you give it a nice warm blanket, and you have a conversation with it. You have dinner with it. You invite it in. And so absolutely, that's a huge piece of it. And that, like, again, that might sound like out there, but if you could imagine that opportunity to never have to actually experience that pain again, if you sat down and gave it a front row seat to really feel it and allow it to communicate with you, allow it to talk to you. I mean, it's beyond powerful. It's like, and I've shifted so many things just doing that. I've helped my clients shift things, again, just by like, okay, here, we're going to look at this, and we're going to feel it right now. And then all of a sudden they can't hold the story, let alone start to tell it or try to attract it, or unconsciously be attracting it. So back to the pattern of feeling invisible. Many of the patterns we're covering in the Live Your Truth, a pattern breaking program, there's one layer of it is invisibility. And so, like, for instance, we're talking about worthiness in the program. We're going to clear a lot of those patterns of feeling of how worth it and worthy we feel. And if you think about it, like, when we don't feel worthy, Many times, there can be that a layer there of we're invisible, we're not seen. And so when we don't feel worthy, we let someone treat us and not, and see us as invisible, right? We let someone not acknowledge us. We let someone just treat us however they want to treat us. And so, they might act like, we're not really there, or that we don't really matter. And so, that's one example. Speaking your truth is another huge example. Like when we're invisible, it is really, really hard. When we think we don't matter, it is really, really hard to speak your truth. It is extremely hard to speak your truth out if you think you don't matter, if you think you don't deserve to take up space in the world. And that's just another layer of that pattern, right? Thinking, okay, I don't deserve to take up space here. It's either I'm too much or I should take up space, or what I have to say is not important. So if you look at that around speaking your truth, and then if you take this pattern, so you feel invisible and you go into your relationships, right? And then the person you're dating treats you like you're invisible, like you don't matter, they don't acknowledge your needs. You go to work and maybe that invisibility translates to you communicate something you need and they go, you're going to do this anyway. Like they don't acknowledge what you've asked for, what you've requested. And obviously that can translate over into a relationship too. And then, when you're invisible and you feel like your voice doesn't matter, then if you think about how that impacts your abundance, right? Like you feel invisible, your voice doesn't matter, then you might not speak your truth out in the world, right? You might not go and, like say if you're wanting to have a bigger voice, you might not communicate that. So in some way, this invisibility, like again, all of these patterns they're deep-seated, they're deep-rooted. Many times we're not aware of the impact that they're having, but they impact everything. And if you can imagine, if you had that feeling within you that what you said was important, you deserved to be seen, you deserved to be heard, like whether it's in, relationship, it's in, your business, whatever it is, if that was deep rooted within you, just think about what that impact could be. So, I say that just to like create that vision, right? That you deserve to be seen, you deserve to be heard, you deserve to feel visible and acknowledged for everything, you deserve to matter, and really recognizing that. So, before we wrap it up, is there like any questions? Feel free, like if you're watching this live or if you watch it later on, I would love to hear your comments. I would love to hear your questions. I would love, just reach out to me if you want to connect with me on Facebook as a personal friend. I would love to have that as well. So I just want to invite you, whatever you feel called to. I know it's funny because part of the invisible pattern is we don't even, just something really simple, we don't make comments on Facebook, right? We don't acknowledge like, okay, I've got a truth here and that needs to be heard. And it's like deep-seated, deep-rooted of, I shouldn't say this, right? I shouldn't do this, or it doesn't matter if I say this, or it doesn't matter if I do this. So I'm going to invite you to start to shift that pattern and break that pattern. And obviously if you join the program, this is one of the patterns we will really go deep with. But yeah, like the start of it, part of it is choosing it, and then we'll clear the energy. We'll take the energy off of a lot of the layers of feeling visible and not feeling, or I should say not feeling visible and really feeling invisible, not hiding, not being seen, not being heard. And again, I invite you to come check out the Living in Your Truth, the Live Your Truth Pattern Breaking Program, and you can check that out at www.deborah.acker.com/live-your-truth-program. So www.deborah.acker.com/live-your-truth-program. I had people walk into me, yes, because they did not see you. Like, I totally know that. I'll tell a brief story since you brought that up, and now I remember my story. So this was years ago, but I was on a plane, and I've never had this happen. I've been all over the world. I love traveling. And I was on a plane, and I'm sitting in the seat, and this flight attendant proceeds, while I'm sitting in the seat, the plane is flying, so it's not like we're boarding or loading or anything. The plane is flying, and she proceeds to step on my seat to like access the overhead bin. I was like, oh my God. And I was very aware that that was what was happening. I was like, holy, and it's like part of what we can do really to start to shift this is you just have that voice, right? You begin to use like in that moment, it took me so off guard. I was like, oh my gosh. But I should have said, if anyone's played the improv game, should have said, that's what's coming up for me right now. But it's like, I should have said, there's a person sitting here, right? I should have acknowledged my own existence. So many times, because that pattern of invisibility comes up because there, in some way, we feel like we don't exist, like we're worried about, like, if basically if we're not seen, we don't exist. That's like the deep-seated layer, right? If I'm not seen, if I'm not heard, if I don't matter, if I'm not understood, what we've internalized that as is I'm not alive, I don't exist, I must not matter, right? And so that's like it's our deep core wounding, right? And so yeah, I totally get that. I mean, I'm little anyways, and then people just, like bump into you because they don't see you. And it's interesting because I've had this little piece where I'm like, oh, is it, like, do you get lighter as you clear your stuff? Like, so people don't naturally see you anyways? I don't know. But that was another thing that's kind of come into my consciousness. So it's this piece of like, okay, I've got hiding and visibility, and then I'm getting lighter. And so I don't know. Like, it just, that came up for me too. But yeah, absolutely. Like, people just bumping into you, people, like, you're at a party, like, I know I've been in this situation. It's like you're at a party and people don't see you. They just, like, you're kind of like the loner at the party. Even a little bit at my high school reunion, it's like, oh, okay, like, I just hanging out by myself, and so, yeah, so, I mean, those are all ways, and if you just think about, like, the long-term impact of that on your life, and just that feeling of not mattering, the feeling of not being acknowledged, not being seen, not being heard, and how painful that can really, really be. And if you could shift that, what your experience would be, yeah, it could change everything. So thank you so much for joining. Much gratitude, much love, much light. If I can answer any questions about the program as well, don't hesitate to reach out here, PM me, or email me at deb@deboraacker.com. You can also email me just on my website through the contact page, but my email is also just deb@deboraacker.com. Much love and light. Talk to you later.